All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Culture Eats Everything. I almost forgot the name of our podcast for a second. Culture Eats Everything, where we talk about the importance of culture, but also like our part in it as leaders. We're always participating in creating or detracting from the culture that we want, and love getting the chance to introduce you to CEOs doing really cool work, making an impact, and just to learn from them. So excited to introduce you to Roger Blake, who's the CEO of Merit Network. Roger, why don't you introduce yourself to us? What do we need to know about you?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. I'm Roger Blake. I born and raised in Michigan. I've had opportunities to go elsewhere along the way in my career, but always kind of wanted to stay closer to family, closer to the what was comfortable and familiar. So it's
The
my
Great
comfort
Lakes. The Great
home,
Lakes. Yeah.
Great Lakes. I have a long time career in industry and a long time as an elected school board official in my hometown or my community. And a year and a half ago, made the switch into a nonprofit as a CEO, and I became CEO of Merit Network. I'd been in telecommunications and cybersecurity for that 30 plus years or so. And now is a perfect opportunity to combine all of that experience, the school board experience, the telecommunication, the cybersecurity into the role I'm in now. And Merit is a purpose-built organization, I like to say. Before the commercial internet existed, the research community in Michigan needed to connect their computers together so that they could make a bigger impact on the research they were doing, share
Mm.
data, get through their research faster, make like I said, a bigger impact with it. And so we still serve the research community in Michigan today. We also have grown, we serve the K-12, library, government, healthcare, nonprofits. And we also work to close the digital divide. We help communities attract investment in broadband that otherwise are underserved or unserved. We help people upskill and better take advantage of the resources that are available to them.
Mm.
So because of our work, there's more people that can interview for a job online or can work out of their house or participate in civil society, maybe avoid a trip to the Secretary of State's branch office and
Yeah.
receive telehealth services and just in general be included in modern society.
Mm.
And we know that on any given day, researchers are using our network to conduct breakthrough research on, fighting cancer or beating Parkinson's. We've got
Wow.
bio researchers that are literally trying to figure out ways to feed the world. And we've got social scientists that are looking at how to grow economic opportunity and expand freedom and democracy. So
Mm.
it's, a compelling job.
Yeah, no small tasks, any of
Right.
those.
We know we have students in our classrooms that are connected by merit that might be the next Mary Barra, who was at Waterford Mod and now at General Motors as the
Mm.
chairman. We
Wow.
might be James McDivitt, the astronaut from Kalamazoo Central and Jackson Community College and University of Michigan. We've got those students in Michigan's classrooms today that we're connecting to the
Mm.
internet. And so because of our purpose and what we do, helping people cross the digital divide, helping the research community, helping the K-12 community, we take, our purpose, we look at it differently. We think about the cost
Yeah.
of a disruption on the network differently. We think about the cost of not including the right people and having access to the network differently. And so that's what our nonprofit Merit Network is all about.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Uh, you got a lot of clarity and purpose behind providing internet connectivity,
Yeah, yeah,
essentially. Like that's
right.
if we were to rewind back, we don't have to say how many decades it is, but like young Roger out of college, did you ever imagine you'd be so fired up about telecommunications
I
or
was
internet?
thinking about that. I have to say, how did I get into this in the first
Yeah.
place? And um, I was a student at Michigan State. Um, Never thought I would get into, the internet as a career.
Yeah.
Um, But I had an uncle that gave me some advice and said, you know, Roger, the bell system is just broken up. This was in 1984. AT&T got broken up. I was a college student in the second half of the 80s. And he said, when there's a monopoly like that that breaks up, there's all kinds of opportunity for more jobs, all kinds of innovation that happens. And
Hmm.
that might be an exciting area for you to look into for a career.
Yeah. Huh.
And I happened to have my ears open. I was
Yeah.
listening, I explored it. Michigan State had a program that was relevant to it, and that became my major. And
Yeah.
I've really thought back so many times over just, he had this article from Forbes magazine that he showed me.
Huh.
And I just remember that moment.
Yeah.
And I've just been, my own, it took me a while going through some work with you guys actually, but discovering, I've pondered it over the years, what my personal purpose really is.
Hmm.
And, my personal purpose is lighting pathways so everyone can connect and thrive.
Hmm.
And, I light those pathways in a virtual sense,
Yeah.
across Merit's fiber optic network. And I light them in a relationship and access to resources kind of sense every day,
Hmm.
just with my own professional network that I tap into.
Yeah. Well, why is that important? Like having that clarity around your own sense of purpose. Like, what does that do for
You
you?
would have to have me sit down on a couch and talk to a psychoanalyst, I think, to help me explain that. I don't really have a good answer to that. I've wondered why does that one resonate with me as opposed to something else. But I can say for sure that a little bit of it's probably inherited.
Hmm.
My father was an immigrant, World War II veteran.
Hmm.
The GI Bill paid his way for college. He ended up becoming a public school teacher. And then when he died at the age of 91, donated his body to science. I mean, he literally lived a lifetime of service to
Hmm.
others and even beyond. And so I guess there's a little bit of inheritance there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, 'cause I just lighting pathways for people. I love that. But what is having clarity around your purpose? Like, how does that help you on your
Oh,
average day at work?
I suppose it just helps me, if there's something that I'm challenged with and I'm thinking about, what seems to be the best direction to go here, or
Mm.
maybe if I'm feeling a little bit frustrated, it gives me something to reflect on and remember that, sometimes the light bulb needs to go off. Sometimes,
Mm.
you need to change the light bulb, but one way or another, the purpose is going and lighting that pathway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, through all those years of what sounds like was your first career in a way, but also really preparing you to be the CEO of Merit now. Tell me about some of the roles that you played, like that that shaped you to feel like you were ready to make a jump and be a CEO.
I, s- early in my career, I was very conscious about managing my work and my professional development in a way that I could sustain both. And I saw others that were, all in on the job and all in on achievement and, meeting
Yeah.
sales goals and that sort of thing. And that was great. They were doing well. I had no hard feelings for them. But there were assignments that I had opportunities to go after that I looked at and I thought, if I do that right now, I will be shortchanging myself in terms of the amount of time I have available to actually learn and grow and build my real knowledge of this industry. And
Mhm.
so I consciously sought out opportunities where I felt like I could have a little bit of balance. And my goal was not to become, superstar at sales, but to be a corporate athlete, to be somebody that, really was comfortable, whatever position I ended up being put into. And
Interesting.
so I performed a number of different roles, project management roles, sales account management roles, engineering, some light level of engineering. I'm no heavy engineer, but some engineering and design responsibilities. I
Mm.
looked for opportunities that really came with just was there a new experience I could get from it?
Yeah.
And along the way, ended up with, a real opportunity because of the timing to be part of the emergence of how does the internet operate? How does the internet impact um, enterprise businesses, and how do you
Mhm.
put those networks together? I was able to get a little bit deeper into the technology with that, but then also at a certain point, found myself leading a team where we had all this legacy services that we were delivering to, I'll say it, Ford Motor Company. And we had a attractive position as an incumbent provider, but we also had last generation technology that we were delivering,
Mhm.
and we weren't really necessarily aligned to move forward with them. And
Mm.
just by good fortune, this was about the same time when voice over IP was coming along, and there was a transition going on where old phone systems were getting replaced by voice over IP, but it really wasn't happening at the large enterprise scale of someone
Mm.
like Ford. And I had the good fortune in 2004 of striking a deal with Ford that was actually a breakthrough initiative for the industry. It made the front page of the Wall Street Journal the day it was
Wow.
announced, and hundreds of trade journals reported on Ford's adoption of enterprise class voice over IP because
Mm.
of a project that I was involved in leading with what at the time was SBC, turned into AT&T.
Yeah.
And so that was an exciting moment in my career, 2004. And then fast
Mm.
forward, that helped me with just realizing there's more I can do and more leadership opportunity for me. And I ended up in a role where I was leading our relationship in the Midwest with state and local and education customers of AT&T's. So that was a
Mm.
great role. Um, but after a little while, after a long while, um, it became something where I reflected on it and thought, part of this is a fancy title. And I'm a middle manager at a company that just is doing one more downsizing after another. And shame on me, I can't even remember the names of the people who I've had to fire along the way anymore, that
Mm.
worked for me, that were part of my organization. And I
Mm.
couldn't reflect on that and remember their names. And at that point in time, I knew it was time for me to get out.
Mm.
And I left. I went to a cybersecurity technology company um, as an individual contributor, and I learned a ton. And it was so
Mm.
exciting, high growth, great opportunity for me to learn. After about 4.5 years of that, was really ready to get back into a leadership role, and that's when the opportunity to join Merit as their CEO came along.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that. Um, yeah. So many things. Well, go back to, you mentioned that you've served on some boards, the school board and stuff. Why has that been part of your journey? Why do you spend the time doing that?
I think that my experience on the school board has been one of the best forms of professional development as a leader that I could ever have gotten.
Mm.
It's a sustained experience. I've got 16 plus years on my local school board where I've
Wow.
seen leadership transitions. We've done long-term planning. I've we battled through, just gaining consensus
Sure.
on issues that are not universally accepted by
Mm-hmm.
people. We managed through COVID, and that was a great challenge. But we have a team. We operate as a team. So there's so much that I get out of that. There's so many HR issues that you see. I mean, school
Mm.
districts are ultimately the core product that school districts have is not the means of production or capital investments. It's people.
Yeah.
So there's so much HR there that
Mm.
as a board member, you're not in the weeds of it, but you're seeing, how do you do right by people? How do you make sure
Mm-hmm.
that people have, a fair shot at everything? And how do you make sure that you're developing people along the way? And so there's a lot of
Yeah.
HR to it. So I've always
Mm.
felt like my time on the school board, I absolutely got back more than I ever
Mm.
gave to it.
Interesting. That's not what if I was going to guess, I'm not sure that's what I would have guessed that you would have said. That's really fascinating that you get
What
so
did you
much out
think
of
I
it.
might have said?
In my mind, like the answer would be something like, because I want to give back to the community, I care about education, like something like that. And I'm sure those things are true. Actually, I know
For
they're true.
sure. Right.
But that's really fascinating. So, I mean
I
that
guess where I'm going with that and
uh,
why I mentioned it here in this recording is just when you think about, what would be some advice for someone,
yeah,
it really is, don't overlook the opportunity to volunteer and to use that as a opportunity for your own professional development. There's so much there to learn from it. And
yeah,
surely, I mean, there was a sense of commitment to public education. As I mentioned, my dad was a public school teacher. I'm
yeah.
a product of public schools, from elementary through a master's degree at University of
Mhm.
Michigan. The public education has meant an awful lot to me over the years. Um, and so there's a desire to give back there. But in terms of what I gained out of it, yeah, I just spoke to it.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great recommendation for people to think about just networking and exposing yourself to other leaders in different places, industries, different seasons of leadership. That's cool. Um, so talk a little bit about, how long have you been a CEO now?
Not quite a year and a half.
Okay, so still new,
Yeah.
especially in comparison to the rest of your career so far. What do you feel like you've learned about yourself over the last year and a half becoming a CEO?
Get comfortable not being comfortable.
Well, what does that mean though?
Well, there's just so many new experiences in
Mhm.
the early on of any kind of job change, but
Yeah,
especially this one where, we talk about imposter syndrome and
yeah,
it's loud. I mean, you
mm,
after never having been a CEO before and you step into that role,
yeah,
in the back of your head, you're hearing you're hearing your inner critic talk to you
yeah,
about what you're not ready for, and
yeah,
so there's a lot of that and how to get past it,
mm,
and also just I guess one of the things I've learned in the last year, and have to credit you for some of this, Kevin, is the importance of storytelling, the importance
mm,
of relating in ways that connect with people.
mhm.
Not necessarily my go-to, as a,
Yeah,
as a person, as a
yeah,
personality, but
hmm,
it's fun actually. Once you
mm,
get into that mindset of trying to think about it and thinking about impact differently than just bits and bytes,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, yeah, and realizing it doesn't matter what you're doing, but in your case, internet connectivity and these things, it's still about people. It's leading
Right.
people in the service of other people.
Yeah.
That's I like that you called it fun, even though it's uncomfortable and takes some
Yeah.
getting used to.
Right.
What do you feel like? What have you learned about leadership in that process? Leading in a different way.
I guess I haven't boiled it down into some kind of lesson about leadership
Yeah.
in that process, but I guess what I would say is that you connect, you're more influential if you have some kind of personal connection or personal story that you're telling.
Yeah.
People identify with it and see themselves in it better. And
Mm.
so you're growing your influence as a leader by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. When you mentioned the imposter syndrome or your critic, like makes a lot of sense being the CEO that, it's like you gave it a loud speaker in your head.
Right.
But I think there'd be other people who maybe, have spent half the amount of time you have in a career and leading people and feeling like you've had success and stuff that might assume someday when you get to that place you have it all figured out. So but that's not true. Is that what you're shaking your head?
But actually, you really have to realize that does give me comfort is that it's natural and normal, and everybody has that.
Hmm.
It's just normal.
Yeah.
And so, I have a Gen Z daughter. She's been in my ear for I don't know how long, telling me just what a lousy decision maker I am, how it's just like she will give me negative feedback. She's
Yeah.
very freely giving of all of that kind of feedback. And you know, I think maybe along the way, some of it's probably her inner critic coming
Mm.
out in her a little bit there too. And so we've grown to understand each other, and I bring it. I like now when someone else is giving me feedback, I joke and I say it's like talking to my family. It's just let's have this conversation. Let's go. So
Well, when you have those moments, because there's so many moments where leadership is uncomfortable. I like that word. Like there's a lot of ambiguity. You don't exactly know if it's the right thing, wrong thing. But how do you decipher if it's your critic just operating in fear, telling you can't do something, versus something maybe to slow down and listen to?
oh, I actually probably listen to it and check for feedback from my team.
Okay.
I don't think that I ever disregard it entirely.
Yeah.
I'm not letting it get kind of drowned out. I
Mm.
it's to me it's a healthy little bit of cynicism and something that I do look for a little bit of, okay, are we all feeling this way? Do we, how
Mm.
are we comfortable? Are we confident we can move forward or what? So I guess it's not something where I ever totally dismiss it, but I'm just looking
Yeah.
for validation or discussing it um, as a legitimate one thing to think of, but not
Yeah.
the only thing to think of.
No, that's really, really good, because I think oftentimes we can think of fear as just always bad, and it's not. Whether it's coming across really critical as this inner voice or from an outside voice, it can be informative if you leverage it. So that's cool.
Yeah.
You slow down and give it credence, and but
Yeah.
not let it stop you, which I think sometimes all of us
Well,
have through that.
I wouldn't be able to keep going in this job if I let it stop me. That's for
It's that frequent and often. Yeah,
Oh
fair
yeah.
enough.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so now you're a year and a half in, you're learning stuff, you're growing the team, you're talk a little bit about the culture. Like how do you what have been some things that have helped you get your arms around understanding the culture coming into a new organization? And then we can talk about kind of like what do you do with it, or how are you trying to change it or shape it more?
It's talking about the culture is probably as much as anything, I talk to the board about the culture of the organization and their perspectives.
Mm.
And I think that to a degree, Merit followed in the past of what the higher ed culture really is in a large degree, which tends to be a little bit slow, tends to be very consensus driven, tends to be, maybe there's an innovation for sure, but there's also a resistance to taking
Mm.
risk.
Sure.
Um, slow to make changes,
Hmm.
a lot of confidence, a lot of self-confidence.
Okay.
Uh,
Experts, a lot of experts.
yeah, a lot of experts. And so it was all of that. It wasn't something where I was surprised to see that. I think it was something that I've been around Merit throughout my career, even though I wasn't part of Merit. So I
Okay.
was familiar with who Merit was and what Merit was like. And so I'd say that it was a healthy culture that was consistent with what we see in a lot of other places too.
Hmm.
We're just trying to move from good or healthy to great, and
Mm.
a culture that seeks out continuous learning and seeks out and tries new ideas regardless of where they might have come from, and
Mm.
that is willing to take measured risk, willing to actively looking for how we can be a good teammate for each other, take care of each
Yeah.
other. I don't think that any of those things were absent from Merit's culture, but we're just trying to grow those areas.
Yeah. 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 Growing those areas, which how do you do that?
Um, well, you wrote the book, or you guys wrote the book. I mean, I, I think I personally, I think it just comes through conversations
Mm.
iterating, having an idea about what we all want to achieve, being
Yeah.
focused on that, and then having
Mm.
a lot of honest conversations with each other about what's going on and challenging each other in a,
Interesting.
friendly
Yeah.
way, in a supportive way, but
Yeah.
challenging each other to just continuously get better.
Yeah. It sounds like you could write a book on it now, because it's just that consistent work,
Yeah.
conversations. You have to show up and lead every day. And I think, well, it's just natural for us to want to have a day off or have people not act like people all the time. Uh, People be peoply, as we hear a lot from our clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell me
Remembering that
if,
you're working with humans too,
yeah.
that aren't going to be consistent all the time and,
Mhm.
do have complexities, and being willing to give people a little bit of grace on things some days.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. How do you, like, if you were talking to a younger version of yourself or just some younger leader, maybe your Gen Z daughter out there, like what are some of the things when you look back at your career and lessons learned that you would want to make sure to encourage younger people to be focused on and working on and looking for?
I was actually just having a conversation yesterday with somebody who's a uh, early in career person at AT&T and thinking about his career
Yeah.
and the same kind of thing. Um, a lot of what we talked about, I would reiterate, but I think the one thing I really focused on was, commit to your own professional development. Make sure
Mm,
that you're consistently curious and learning and
mm, yeah.
and not necessarily trying to do it to impress someone. You're just doing it because you want to grow and learn.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is be authentic, be yourself. Don't try to be someone you're not. It doesn't end up working out.
Right, right. And it's so easy to say, but it is really hard. There are times where we feel like we have to know all of the answers
Yeah.
or whatever. And I think the sooner we can all get to a place of accepting that we'll never have all of the answers and that the job isn't actually being smart enough. It's learning to know all that you don't know and stay
Right.
curious, just like you said. That's good. Well, how about this last question for you? What is one book that you would recommend for the rest of us to read? A book that had an
Kevin,
impact on you?
that's a great question, and there's a few books that I have to mention. I
Okay.
really enjoy biographies on
Okay.
that front. There's two that jump out at me. The Winston Churchill biography, kind of any of them. I'm sure there's more than one,
Yeah.
but there's some great stories about resilience and
Mm,
grit and just having faith and being
mm.
optimistic and yet realistic at the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So some great lessons there. The Sully Sullenberger, what's it called, Highest Duty. He was the airplane pilot that crash landed in the Potomac um,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
years
Okay.
ago after the bird strike, and
Yeah.
that is, it's a great book. It
Okay.
took me a while. The first few chapters, it's like, okay, a lot of detail. And then after about halfway in, I just could not put the book down.
Mm.
So great books there. But to a little bit out of the box, I'll
Oh,
give
I
you
love it. Those
I'll
are
give
really
you a
good.
book that I really enjoyed recently called The Lost City of the Monkey God. And
Okay.
it sounds like, maybe it's science fiction or
Or the Jungle Book or something.
yeah, yeah. It's a true story
Mm.
about Honduran society 500 years ago and what happened to this lost city
Mm.
and why did it become a lost city? And
Love
it
it.
was published in 2017. So it was pre-pandemic that it was published,
Okay.
but there's a lot of speculation that it had to do with a virus. And
Mm.
it's an amazing
Okay.
story
Okay.
about use of technology and archaeology and just it's a great book. And it's
Love
about
it.
I'm an audiobook guy. It's about a 10-hour listen.
Okay.
And I really
Love it.
enjoy it. So there
Love
you
it.
go, a little bit
That's a
out of the
great
box.
recommendation. Yeah, I like it. Well, I will
Yep.
put it on my list immediately. That sounds
Yeah.
very fascinating
Yeah.
to check out. Great. Well, Roger, thank you so much, not just for taking time for this and to share about your life and your story, but also for the work you guys are doing, as you talked about that digital divide and the work you guys do at Merit. Thanks for all you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
All right.
This was
Have a good
fun.
one. Good. All right. See ya.